Hi, lovely darling viewers. It's Jen here at Check Her Joy, and this time I'm back with another Top 5 Wednesday. As always, the Goodreads group is in the description below if you want to check that out. And this week's topic is future classics. So these are books that we're still going to be talking about 50 or 100 years from now. Probably books that will get taught in schools in the future, or at least that's how I interpreted this topic. So the first book on my list is the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. The first book is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I think if for no other reason, the cultural impact that Harry Potter had at the time when they were first being released is probably going to be enough to keep it as a classic and to have discussions about it in the future in classrooms. It's also a timeless story. There's not a lot of pop culture references in here. The references that are there are within world stuff, but it still relates to it's this epic battle between good and evil and defeating the Dark Lord, but also has a lot of very human, very relatable things that happen. They feel like normal kids and teenagers, and the characters are complex and interesting, and there's a lot to dissect in here, and there are already classes devoted just to Harry Potter. So I feel like this is a book that will still get passed down parent to child, the way that we read like Alice in Wonderland now, or will be taught in classrooms. The second book on my list is Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. I can never pronounce his name. So this one focuses on cloning dinosaurs from fossilized DNA and creating this theme park, and what can happen when nature decides to take over, and kind of this balance between scientific advancement and humans thinking they know best in like nature, and how that kind of runs everything. So part of why I think this will be a classic is that there are dinosaurs, and I don't think there will ever be a time when humans are not fascinated by these giant reptiles that used to walk the earth, and especially small children. So I think we're always going to want dinosaur stories. The fact that it's a movie also is going to help. But I think we're just always going to have a fascination with these giant reptiles. So the subject matter is going to stay relevant. The struggle, like scientific ethical dilemma, is enough in there to make us stop and think and question things. And I think it will become like classic science fiction for that reason also. There is a bit of like the technology and the computers are going to start to seem outdated after a while. I mean, they already do. Um, but a lot of but at the same time, classic science fiction that we have now from 100 years ago kind of has that same problem where we've surpassed it. So I think it'll be okay. The next on my list is Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. The first book in the series is Cinder. These are dystopian fantasy retellings, and I kind of took all the dystopian books as a whole, and The Hunger Games is another one that I haven't read, and it might also become a classic, but I feel like Cinder, because it happens so far into the future, that it's not something like we're going to catch up with it and have it be like laughing at it. Although that hasn't stopped 1984 from still being relevant. Um, but I also feel like we have this innate need as humans to tell fairy tale stories, and to wonder about the future and the stars. Also, it does a lot of. Also, there are a lot of things happening in these books, from like plague taking over the earth to how technology is advancing to just human nature. We also have this epic battle of good versus evil. So I think it stands a chance if Cinder's already got like a following within like young adult literature, but if we can push it beyond that and make it um, reach, I think, more adults and passing it on to kids as they grow up, that it could stand a chance of becoming a classic in the future, even if it doesn't have recognizability as, say, like The Hunger Games. It's also not depressing, which I think is good too. Not that depressing books can't become classics, but I think it's innately more likable than, say, The Hunger Games or Divergent. The next book on my list is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I actually haven't read the entirety of this book. I read like chapter one, but the subject matter is what keeps me from reading it, and I also think why it's going to become a classic. So it follows Hazel and Augustus, who are two teenagers who both have cancer, and that struggle with like facing your mortality, especially when you're facing it so young. I think will I think that topic and that idea will stay relevant, even if some of the stuff that's happening to them in their lives won't quite feel the same to children like 100 years from now. I also feel like it has enough of a buzz and enough people reading it now that love it, that it will get passed on, and it's a discussion that could be used to talk about cancer and about terminal illness. So it could be relevant in schools still too. So this one's a maybe. So the last book on my list is the series March by John Lewis, Andrew Aydin, and Nate Powell. And these tell the story of the civil rights movement through the memoirs and eyes of John Lewis, who was one of the big names during that. I think the fact that these are graphic novels are going to make them more accessible, especially to teenagers. So teaching it in school, it covers a lot of the civil rights movement, from like the bus boycotts in Montgomery to the everything that was happening in Birmingham. It covers the March on Washington and the Freedom Riders and the March on Selma, and how important civil rights and voter rights were. So I think that it covers a large enough area that it can be used to be taught in schools, and I think it's still going to be important. So in the way that we currently study, like Frederick Douglass's memoirs, to learn about the Civil War and slavery in the South, that I think that this will become one of the important ones for learning about the civil rights movement in the future and currently. So those were my top picks for books that could become classics in the future. It'll be interesting to see if that actually happens, or some of these books fade into obscurity, never to be talked about again. So let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with any of the books that I picked, or what books you think will make good future classics. Yeah. Peace out. I love you guys, and keep reading. Bye.